My name is Taya Graham. Welcome to the Police Accountability Report. Today, I'm joined by my Real News reporting partner, Stephen Janis, and our guest, Ivan Potts. I want to start the show with a story. It's a story about our home city, and it is a story of failure. That is, Baltimore's inability to reduce crime has made city fodder for TV shows like The Wire and Homicide: Life on the Street. It has also placed the imprint of a deeper, more damning moral failure upon our community. But what's intriguing about this narrative is who benefits from it. Logic would dictate intractable crime would be bad for everyone, but not in Baltimore. Because the truth is, crime does indeed pay. And for the city's sprawling law enforcement industrial complex, the continuum of violence has been a gusher of cash. The city spends twice as much on policing as education. And year after year, officers run up tens of millions of dollars in overtime spending with little oversight. In fact, when the Justice Department concluded that the Baltimore Police Department had been engaging in racist and unconstitutional policing, the solution was more money to train officers and new technology. It's a very telling relationship between failure and profit. The worse crime is, the more dysfunctional the department, the more profitable the business of policing comes. And it is the worst perverse incentive brought in part by the core values of capitalism, profiting off human misery. And this perverse incentive may tell us quite a bit about the latest developments in a case that will be the thrust of our show, the continued misdeeds of the Gun Trace Task Force. The GTTF was a group of 8 officers who have either pled guilty or were convicted of robbing residents, dealing drugs, and stealing overtime. They operated in Baltimore with impunity for years, racking up huge salaries and getting overtime while on vacation. They also stole and dealt drugs. But yesterday, federal prosecutors announced a new set of charges involving this notorious unit. And it's what's in the indictment that may provide some insight between aggressive policing and money. So, Stephen, can you tell us a little bit about what's inside these charges?
Well, yes, it involves someone who was not part of the Gun Trace Task Force, but a veteran police sergeant who had been with the department for 25, 30 years, named Keith Gladstone. And he was indicted on federal charges for interfering with the civil rights of a young man in Baltimore City. The story is that he was at a restaurant. He gets a call from Sergeant Wayne Jenkins, who's identified in the indictment only as WJ, but everybody knows who it is, saying that he had just run over a suspect intentionally and was freaking out because really there was no probable cause. So this officer or sergeant, I think he was a sergeant in charge, departs the restaurant, drives to the crime scene, takes a BB gun out of the trunk of his car, and while everyone's standing there, places the gun or the BB gun right next to the suspect's legs so that the suspect is ultimately charged. Prosecutors dropped the charges, but yes.
So why would it benefit a police officer to plant a BB gun on a suspect?
Well, the point was that you can charge him with some sort of crime, and you can also say, I saw a gun. I had to chase him because I saw a gun. And as we discussed earlier, I believe that BB guns are a little bit easier to sort of move around.
A regular gun, you have to trace the serial numbers.
It has to be a serial number. There's a big database.
Owner was,
so it would be much more difficult. But a BB gun, and in fact, in the trial, they talked about that. The officers who were convicted testified about having a big stock of BB guns. And so, basically, what happened was this poor kid gets charged. Fortunately, the prosecutors dropped the charges, and then there was another charge against him for interfering with the investigation. So he's facing some pretty serious federal charges.
So let me get this straight. The Gun Trace Task Force officer, Sergeant Wayne Jenkins, intentionally runs over a young man. When the young man is lying on the ground, and I'm assuming writhing in pain, a Baltimore police officer takes the time to plant a gun on him. Ivan, what are your thoughts on this?
Facts.
Right.
I just believe, they've been planting guns on everybody. It's like you say, it generate money, it generate finance, and then it seals probable cause, because that's the key thing. Like, without probable cause, the case get thrown out. With probable cause, it justifies my actions of chasing you and doing what I had to do to you. So it's just a strategy to justify probable cause, putting guns on people, because once you got a gun, it's like you're a criminal.
Just a reminder to everyone watching, 3 members of the Gun Trace Task Force planted a gun on Ivan, which led to a wrongful conviction. And Stephen, this isn't the first time a gun trace task force member has been accused of planting evidence, correct?
No, in fact, a very controversial case in the death of Detective Sean Suter, who was a person who had worked with Jenkins and other members of the Gun Trace Task Force. When he either committed suicide or was murdered in a West Baltimore alley in 2017, a case emerged from 2010 when they had all sort of conspired, this is what was testified, all conspired to rob a man in 2010. They had tried to corner his car, he'd driven off, and he got into an accident and killed the father of a Baltimore City police officer. After the accident, another officer drove to the scene with drugs, put the drugs in the car, and again planted them on the gentleman to justify, what had happened and to cover it up. It's like a really clear pattern here. Your case, this case, and now this case. Where
you gotta remember, like, when they do things wrong, they violating the law. So it's like I gotta do what I gotta do right quick to clean up this. So like if you're the law, then you know how to get away with breaking the law.
And I remember your description, which is really kind of horrible, how they planted the gun on you. They took the gun and said, hey, it's your gun, or what happened?
Yeah, they tried to bar my fingers up on a gun to get the seal of fingerprints.
So they actually took your hands?
While I was in cuffs.
And they tried to put the gun next
in my
to you?
hand, yeah.
So they came up to you and put the gun back there, and then what did they say to you when they...
This your gun, you going to jail. Give us the information, or you out of here.
Wow.
By the time I got to Central Bookings, I was so like and distraught, like I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. And then when I stopped on the paddy wagon, I had a gash in my leg. I was like, damn. And the Bookings didn't even accept me. I had to go straight to the hospital.
You were that injured that they couldn't allow you in. Ivan, there was something I wanted to ask you about, something you said you were here when you were with us last time. You said that the police, they need to stir the pot to get the fish. What did you mean by them having to stir the pot?
Stir the water to catch the fish.
Thank you, thank you.
It's like, all right, just think of it. If you got a bowl of fish, right? It's hard to catch fish if you just put your hand in there. You can't catch them like that, right? But if I get this taking a big spoon and I stir it, then all the force from the water is going, I could just easily get one fish at a time out the water. So it's like cause confusion, right?
Or chaos.
Right?
Yeah.
And during the chaos, we'll act like we the hero.
Right. But you were cause of the chaos.
Right.
Exactly.
But I was the cause of the chaos.
That's so interesting because that's one of the things they talked about, these door popper things they talked about during the trial, which means that they would go up to, they see a group of African-American young people, drive their car up and jump out. And then whoever ran, they would chase.
They would chase.
And that would give them probable cause.
Yeah.
It was like something, it was called door popping or something.
Yeah, like they usually intimidate. Like some officers are cool, they respectable, but then you got your officers like, I'm the bully.
Right.
And I jump, what's up? What you doing out here? And all that. Like, yo, you're not even from here. This is where I grew up at. This is where, I was born and raised.
So it's like a military presence.
Right, you're not even from here and you telling me what am I doing here? Right. How you gonna do that? How you gonna send somebody that's like me. I'm from Baltimore. If they sent me to Prince George's County, the police them, I'm not from there.
And then you don't really understand
and
how their
I'm talking to their
work.
children and the mothers and the fuck, go in the house. And what's you? Right. But then if we buck, we get shot.
Marilyn Mosby is reviewing over 2,100 cases that have been tainted by the Gun Trace Task Force. When you know that she's doing that, do you think there's any way to kind of undo the damage done by the Gun Trace Task Force?
I mean,
outside of her actively working to try to vacate these judgments.
The only way to heal a city from this is just to liberate the city. Justice. Give people their just due. Like, that's it. Y'all print money, they print money. It's just paper. If y'all want, then if you think about it, if you help the people in Baltimore, then Baltimore will be more better economically.
Certainly.
You just keep bringing people down, pushing people down, beating people down. How you think they gonna act?
Yeah, the Gun Trace Task Force could get overtime when they were on vacation. They were making Those guys are making $150,000, $160,000 a year.
Exactly. And then you got officials in Baltimore that need to step up more. Stop being bougie. Stop acting like you too good, or I'm, a middle-class citizen. I pay my taxes. Stop that, because at the end of the day, that's your children out there. That's your blood. They the same color as you. They're going through the same struggle as you. So why treat them different than you?
Right.
You feel me?
Why let those respectability politics?
Exactly. We understand the environments is messed up, but it's like people in these environments are now trying to work to get out of it instead of work to invest in it.
Right.
Well,
that's a good way to
They working to get to the next class.
At the real news, we would call that a class conflict.
And it's a big class conflict. And that's why a lot of things in America is like that, because, you got all these classes below the poverty line, lower class, middle class, upper middle class, upper class. And everybody, it's like, once you leave from this class and you get to this class, I'm better than this class. Then when you get to this class, I'm better than that class. Then you sitting up there with them, and it's like, we run the world. You know what I mean? So.
Well, Stephen, this is not the only recent case that's drawn national attention for officers planting evidence on people, right?
Well, let's show a video. A case that actually, again, made Baltimore City Police nationally famous was a case of an officer who, on his own body cam footage, showed himself staging the discovery of drugs.
Yeah, I watched that.
It was stunning, because at that point, the officers didn't realize that there was a 30-second rollback. So in other words, when
they
you
didn't realize
activate,
that when they stopped it,
when you activate it,
30 seconds previous.
the cameras are always recording. So when you activate it, it takes back 30 seconds before you start recording to prevent this kind of stuff. And so you can see the officers turning their camera on and laughing, and then he goes back into an alley and he goes, "Oh, I found it," after he put it there, because the camera gets him putting it there. So it was, it caused a lot of controversy. Believe it or not, the police commissioner defended it, but another person went to jail. Another person went to jail. I mean, look, how many cases do we have to have until we realize this is not, this is almost criminal in organization in the way it's run?
How common is it for someone who lives in your neighborhood or is part of your community? How often do you hear someone say, "I have had Baltimore City Police plant drugs on me or misrepresent my case in some way"?
That's normal.
That's just everyday business.
Yeah, everyday business. You don't get me wrong, and I'm not speaking bad. It's not all bad police.
Sure.
Usually, uniform police, they be chilling. But the knockers, they the knockers. They just got their reputation.
What knockers are? I mean, what are knockers?
They knock shit off. I mean, it's not. That's what they do, though. They come, and when the police are around, the plainclothes is like, yo, the police is out.
Right.
The knockers is like, yo, the knockers out.
Right. And they come up in that van, and four of them jump out, and then your door gets kicked down.
Yeah. And it's in like a fear. It's like the boogeyman coming or something, like the wolf, the big bad wolf.
Yes.
The knockers coming, everybody. People scared to walk to the store because you don't know if they're going to jump out. You don't know.
Absolutely.
And that's what happened to you, because you were walking to the store, and the gun trace task force just came down
the
alley.
Came right up the one way and jumped out on me. Hey, where you going at?
The store.
Yeah.
But that's not good.
I mean, what kind of community, who's going to want to live in a community where you can't walk to the store because
it's
you're
a war
afraid
zone.
of police?
It make you feel like that. It's no different from the tears in prison. No difference.
One of the overarching themes that emerged with the Gun Trace Task Force, which is also a general issue with American policing, is aggressive military-style tactics. That is turning law enforcement into quasi-military operations that have little connection to the community. The GTTF were known for harsh, unconstitutional tactics, but quasi-military policing is not just limited to Baltimore. Let's watch this clip.
With y'all's help, you had the Ridgely Police Department go from riding bicycles to 2 K9 dogs to a military-style police force. This is evident. I've been preaching for 5 years that we need to change the military-style policing back to the way Foster had it, 2 bicycles, the chief getting out, knowing the neighborhood. Our police department and our K9 dogs are for confiscation. That came out of the chief's mouth. Not protection, not crime prevention, but for confiscation.
It was testimony from a resident of a small town on Maryland's Lower Eastern Shore called Ridgely. Residents there were demanding the council suspend its police chief. Their reason, his role in the death of Anton Black. Anton was a 19-year-old high school track star who was chased and tasered by police last year after a white woman called the police and alleged that he kidnapped his own 12-year-old cousin. Police tasered, then forced Anton to the ground. And it is the man seen here on top of Anton that caused the controversial testimony. The state medical examiner said Black died from an underlying heart condition, but an outside expert we consulted said it was due to positional asphyxiation. But what we wanted to focus on today were the comments about military-style policing. This is a theme that has pervaded the case, that both Greensboro, Maryland, where Anton died, and now the small town of Ridgely, whose chief participated in his arrest, have both turned to get tough law enforcement. Stephen, does it surprise you that this type of policing is being applied to towns like Greensboro?
It's incredibly surprising because we spent time in Greensboro, we spent time in Ridgely, mostly Greensboro, and there's nothing there. I mean,
It's a
nothing.
very
It's a small,
quiet town.
What,
2,300 people
2,000
in it.
people,
It's very small.
barely any traffic. And I was just kind of stunned because, of course, I've seen it in Baltimore. We've lived with it here for decades. But to hear that the police departments went to this, there's just no justification that we could see from our reporting.
Now, to be fair, we asked the mayor of Greensboro about the concerns of the residents, and he had a different strategy, and he pretty much
disagreed with that assessment.
He pretty much disagreed with what the residents
We just want to be fair and show that
we want to give him a chance to be heard. So let's roll the clip of the mayor of Greensboro.
Just one last question. There was a sense of policing kind of has changed and become more aggressive toward the African American community. How do you respond to that?
Has police
Become more aggressive with the African American community, which precipitated this particular event?
I don't. I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I don't at all.
How does aggressive policing affect the community? Black males accounted for 22% of all people shot and killed in 2017, and yet they are 6% of the total population. White males accounted for 44% of all fatal police shootings, and Hispanic males accounted for 18%. We want to make the point to emphasize that interacting with militarized law enforcement industrial complex impacts poor whites and low-income folks of all colors, not just African Americans. So, Ivan, what do you think? This process of police officers wreaking havoc in communities and then getting paid to fix that same havoc, doesn't it seem like a strange cycle to you? What do you see happening here?
I see.
How much does money have an influence here?
Oh, I think money is the whole purpose, the motive of things. It's capitalism. You know, like they got to make a profit off of the lives that they're incarcerating.
Yes.
You know, so I think it's like like you said, it's like they create the problem and then we got the solution to the problem too.
Right.
Because it's like we're getting money for it anyway, so it's like we create it and then we collect our money off of it.
Right.
Yeah,
Get money both ways, coming and going.
Yeah, it's like even with drug epidemics, like where are all these new drugs coming from?
Yeah. You know, if you
They're not natural.
Anyone who comes to Baltimore, we have a prison industrial complex that's huge. It's bigger than any factory or any sort of employer.
Absolutely.
Look how many prisons in Maryland alone.
But you know, the city has like 8 different institutions, right in the middle, right up the street from us right here, that just, you know, it shows what we put our money into, including a new youth jail.
And they building jails for the babies.
Yeah,
like,
the youth jail.
They building jails of baby bookings. Like, like look how they got our kids growing up mentally already.
Preparing.
You got the projects right here inside the prison yard.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do.
Your kids is growing literally outside the projects playing in the prison yard right next door.
Right. And you know, it's very often
What
shown,
community in the United States have you ever seen that in?
and it's very often shown that if you have a family member who is incarcerated, it increases the likelihood that you're going to be incarcerated as a young person.
And what perception
How's that
perception are
accidental?
you giving the kids that you grow up next to a prison?
Right.
Just think.
I totally agree.
Would you want your child growing up next to a prison?
And Ivan, we should note that the city has yet to take responsibility for the trauma it's inflicted upon you. Where are you right now in getting some kind of reparations or justice?
Fighting.
Okay.
Like, Baltimore City just a stubborn city. Like, I don't think they respect me as a citizen. I get mad love for the people in my city that don't have nothing to do with this, but the people that do have something to do for me, there ain't no love. You know, I still get mugged by the police. They still aggressive with me every day. Like,
So it's still happening? It's still
yeah, what? It ain't nothing changed. Nothing.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
You know, nothing changed.
It's not that I'm surprised.
I don't have
to
no
hear it,
type
but
of immunity. I'm still a regular, ordinary black male on the street, you know.
Are you on any kind of probation or parole?
I'm a free man,
I'm glad to hear that.
you know.
So they can't violate you in any way.
No,
I'm so glad
but
to hear that.
it's just like the headache. Like, why who want to live their life every day like that?
Looking over their shoulder, wondering.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? It's sad. And in Baltimore, it's like, all right, we see the drug problem, but this is where the opiate epidemic is at, right? Now it's not even heroin. That's the natural, I mean, that's an opiate that grows out of the earth. That's something, I mean, not to, you know, parade it, but that's something God created. Now it's something that scientists created.
One thing we're going to do.
The hell is this shit coming
One thing
from?
we're going to do is that when, you know, what we want to hear Ivan's making music, and
Yeah,
it's
we want to
good.
have an opportunity
So
to make
as we
sure
roll-
that
as we-
people,
as
as
we
we
roll
leave the
out,
show, we want to make sure that
playing
people
right
have
now.
a chance to hear your music
Okay.
and to hear how you have taken the pain that you've been given, the raw deal that you've been given, and you've turned it into art, and you've shown people that you're going to keep standing and that you're not going to let the city get you down.
Absolutely.
We will continue to follow this and other stories as we work to hold police accountable here in Baltimore and across the country. I'm your host, Taya Graham. These are my guests, Stephen Janis and Ivan Potts. And I want to thank you for joining me at the Real News Network. If stories like these are important to you, please subscribe.
I can't believe they found me guilty when I went to trial. I can't believe they found me guilty when I went to trial. I can't believe they found me guilty when I went to trial. Hollered at my mama and I ain't see a smile. March 2nd, 2016, I was standing in front of them devils like, what you mean? I was ripping that 40, I pulled it up out my jeans and threw it. Please show me where the